Actually, no.
I just started the
intro
broadcast.
for 1 second.
We're
I know,
live
I'm aware.
right now.
Yeah. I have to 1 second.
To catch everybody up, it's funny. I just before we actually start streaming, the participants can see each other, and I had said to Siobhan, "Are you ready?" She goes like, "Yeah." And I start the thing, so it starts warming up the broadcast. It starts to broadcast, and she goes, "Wait, no." So yeah, it looks as if she's still getting something sorted out, but it did make for kind of an entertaining beginning if you didn't know the context.
Okay, so hopefully that made a smooth transition. I was just wired in so I don't randomly disconnect.
Gotcha. Yes, you do have some technical issues over there sometimes. It is true.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Okay, so basically to recap what I just told you, I was going to either put this into a blog post or I was going to tweet about it. I realized it was going to take a bit of content to do. And you know what? It's small enough that I don't want to put a lot of effort into composing something, but it's big enough that I do want to state something for posterity because, as you know, I like to talk about my hypotheses as they happen before the data comes in. And to, again, I like posterity. I feel like that's good science, is putting it out there, what you think it might be, then getting the data, and then living with the results. So this is the hypothesis I want to test. And I realized that I was going to run out of time. Like, what I would have liked to have done is finish this full 30 days of carnivore, eating ad libitum the whole time. And then extending onto it a little more of a controlled experiment associated with this triglyceride carryover effect that I've been really intensely obsessing about. The problem is I'm going to run out of time. I have my wife, not supposed to say what a woman's age is, but she's turning a landmark number, and we have plans for her during that period of time, and so I'm going to give her the gift of my not being on any experiments or having any bandwidth associated with that. So yes, basically on that week, she's going to get the man she originally married before he became the extreme N of 1 experimenter. So I have that deadline. I mentioned when I was going into the carnivore diet that I knew this would be an exploratory experiment. It definitely has been. So my original parameters, as I had intended in the first place, was to see if I could go beef only. But I wasn't committing to that per se, just more saying, I'm going to see if I can do this. About halfway in, I got a little more interested in seeing if I could add in eggs. And in the midst of all of this, the triglyceride carryover effect happened. We already have a blog post on that, so I'm not going to talk about it. And I'm not going to recap all of that, but I'm going to say that something struck me since adding eggs and having beef, which was that really my diet wasn't that different now from my baseline diet that I had from experiments earlier last year, including the resistance training experiment. In other words, if I'm having beef and eggs right now, but I'm waking up with high triglyceride numbers, yet last year, I think it was in September, I'm doing like the resistance training experiment, and I'm having beef and eggs and cheese, but I'm not waking up with high triglyceride numbers. Well, that suggests that there may actually be something relevant to the cheese. Now, a number of people have weighed in on this anyway before this happened. Mutual friend of ours, Carrie Diulis, for example, was discussing how indeed there could be more of an insulinogenic effect with the cheese. Another person on Twitter, I'm not going to say his name correctly, but he was bringing up white versus yellow cheese, and that that's something else I should consider adding to the experiment. All of these things intrigue me. Really, I would have been prompted to want to do this anyway because that is the one component that seems to be distinctively missing. Now, here's the catch. there are a few different confounders in play that weren't in play in the prior baseline diet. One, I'm a little more stressed. Two, I'm a little bit of a difference in profile for sleeping, I believe. I average close to like 5.5 hours of sleep a night, and I think back then I had just slightly more, but not a lot more. I think it was maybe like 6 to 6.5 hours. One other possible confounder is, as I mentioned with the update on the triglyceride carryover, I wasn't getting my usual 2.5 miles of walking a day. Like I usually add the 2.5 miles of walking. And since I'm not, basically since I had gotten to where I was visiting my family, is really cold there, and I just didn't get out for the first few days. And once I discovered the triglyceride carryover effect, I didn't want to change any other variables. So effectively, I've been kind of cooped up wherever I'm at, not getting that exercise. And that exercise might also be a possibility. And then finally, one more. And the one last difference is that not taking any supplements, save electrolytes when needed. So,
And what taking before vitamin D and vitamin K, from what I remember?
vitamin K2, vitamin D3, I want to say around 500 milligrams of magnesium separately, and a multivitamin. It's like a men's multivitamin of some kind. Now, I started experimenting last fall with not doing the supplements, and then, captured data discretely from that. And I was curious if there would be any differences that I would notice otherwise. So I don't know how much that may or may not have an impact on this change. But I know this. I can't eat ad libitum. So for the next 7 days, I'll actually be eating identically the baseline diet that I had in the resistance training experiment. And those are the key differences that will be different from the resistance training experiment. A, I won't be getting my 2.5 miles a day. B, I won't have the supplements. C, little more good stress, as you could say, I think, relative to before. So there's a lot more of that kind of intensity, and maybe a slight difference in sleep. But outside of that, pretty much it should be the same. I'm even eating at the same times of day, 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. What do you think? What would you speculate is going to happen?
I mean, it's kind of 50-50 for me because, like I said in previous videos and previous posts, I've never seen this triglyceride rise, but for the most part, I've also been eating dairy. There's been, I think, like a 1-month stint and then a couple weeks here and there where I didn't have any dairy. So could go either way, but I've also pretty much always stuck within the 13-hour fasting window.
Right.
So I don't know for sure. I think it is plausible that it could be.
You don't have wake up triglyceride numbers, period. Right.
Also true. Yeah.
Now that may change because you're looking to get one of these devices as well.
Yeah, in the very near future.
Sorry, my phone called and it like broke into my computer. It's the age we live in, I guess.
Apparently.
So
yeah, but
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. So this will kind of take us into a whole nother direction. I'll be adding the cheese for 7 days. I'll be getting my blood drawn. By the way, double stuck again. Woohoo!
I noticed that.
I'll be taking a blood draw 7 days from today in the morning. And then I'm going to add on just a few days for one addendum experiment. The addendum experiment is I'm going to add carbs. And I'm doing this in addition to what I already have because there's another great guy by the name of Paul Mason. You probably heard of him. He did a great presentation last year at Low Carb Low Carb Down Under at Gold Coast, and I happen to have the pleasure of being there and being able to watch it and so forth. And he was talking about the Feldman protocol, and he was suggesting his hypothesis is just need to add carbs. If you add more carbs, you'll get more of an insulin response. You're going to end up with lower overall LDL. And as you know, I already have done one experiment that seems to suggest that it might have tackled that hypothesis, and it was the Skittles experiment. That was literally the added sugar experiment. But I'm thinking of kind of doing just another one, just to sort of repeat this. And after having gone 5 days on exactly the same diet, and then again, going another few days on exactly the same diet, I could test what an addition of, and I'm just going to ask him, I haven't talked to him about it yet, but I'm going to ask him on what level of addition he would like to request that I add, and then I'll continue taking lipid tests throughout. But I'm kind of excited for that one. I think that'll be interesting.
Because we have had people accidentally do that when they read about your carb swap experiment and they take it to mean carb loading. But they report back, and in fact, they generally come back with high LDL and also high trigs, which isn't particularly surprising. But on the other hand, you could argue that that's because they were eating carbohydrates in excess. So it depends on what he means. He could just mean a small amount, in which case, maybe. But I have a feeling that probably won't work, and probably, I don't think so. Just based off of what I've seen so far and what I know of adding carbs to fat in general.
I'll put it this way. I would expect that the same amount in calories of carbs added will not reduce LDL to the same degree that the same amount of calories in fat added would. So I wouldn't be too surprised if some amount of carbs added does have some marginal difference in LDL. I just don't think it'll be a dramatic drop. But it would be interesting if it was. I would definitely welcome if it turned out that you could just, eat at what your normal diet is, add some carbs on top of that, and then that would make a difference. Now, the carb swapping has already been demonstrated and does fit into the lipid energy model as far as if you take down fat and bring up carbs correspondingly, isocalorically, right, to where the calories are the same. The switch off is different. But without getting into the mechanisms, I think this comes back to glycogen stores in the liver and a whole bunch of other stuff.
But it's definitely worth testing, though, and it's easy enough to do, so that should be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, my one gripe is that I think, because I would like to do it for at least 3 days, it may be one of these rare times where I do an experiment and I don't get to get a full blood draw at the end of it. Because
bad times.
Yeah, it is. It's
granted, though, if you do find something interesting, as far as the lipid results go, you can always redo it later and just get the full lab work then.
Sure, it's just I hate that. I hate the idea that any experiment that I ever do, not having full labs at the end. Like, that's hard for me to grasp that possibility. But this is, the thing is, I've got the cardio check. The next best thing, at least as far as the lipids go, to at least determine, even if it's just hypothesis building. So yeah, I think I'm going to add that. Outside of that, that's pretty much the update. I want to add cheese. I'm going to add cheese today, but it's in a controlled manner. I'm eating to the schedule past this point. It won't feel like the carnivore diet experiment that I envisioned at the beginning, because I envisioned having a lot more variety, eating when I wanted to, eating as much as I wanted to. So I may have to come back and do another version of a carnivore diet experiment. But that said, still all animal products all the way through. I do like that I've got blood draw at each stage.
So for the meat, because your baseline diet was hot dogs, wasn't it?
All beef.
It was hot dogs, cheese, and then the eggs. So are you going to go back to the hot dogs, or are you sticking with what you were eating for carnivore? Because that is a difference.
No, I have to. I have to go back to the hot dogs. It's lame because
Mhm.
I'm going to miss those steaks. That was just one of the best things, was just
Yeah,
having steaks and
but
burgers.
that is an additional difference between the baseline diet and the carnivore diet. Although I think you were having some hot dogs, you were also having pure meat in a different form, not as processed, if you want to use that word. Plus, hot dogs do usually have some minute amount of filler at the very least.
Oh,
So,
sure. But the last 2 days, since getting back from visiting family, the last 2 days I have had only those hot dogs. And just for the viewer, it's Nathan's uncured beef franks. So it's the naturalist, I guess you could say, version of beef franks I could get. Look, the reason I chose it, as I've told you, but other people may not know, the reason I chose hot dogs as the beef component is I needed the baseline diet to accommodate traveling. So if I'm getting, let's say, burgers or steaks, but I'm also in the process of traveling, my ability to accommodate having burgers and steaks at a scheduled time is extremely compromised. It's very hard for me to be able to go, oh, I need to get, a 1 pound burger of about this fat composition near where I'm staying in this hotel at 6 p.m. Right? Like, that's a lot harder than, oh, okay, if I can get there, for a conference the day before, and I can either buy these hot dogs or I can literally bring them with me, in my carry-on, and then throw them in the fridge at the hotel. That's a lot more possible. It's a lot more doable, and super relevant for me being able to do this for the baseline diet. So again, this isn't about, obviously I would prefer to be having, grass-fed steaks and of a particular fat quantity amount and so forth, but it's less quantifiable from a data standpoint. So I just had to throw that out there because I'm sure a lot of people are like, why would you do all beef hot dogs instead of actual beef from like an actual hamburger or an actual steak?
right. But you do have that transition period, you said, the couple days of hot dogs only
Yes,
with the eggs, I would guess. So you're
right.
only going to be adding the cheese.
The last 2 days I've had, on each day, 10 hard-boiled eggs and 10 hot dogs that were these
Okay.
Nathan's uncured hot dogs. Now, I'm I would have liked it to have been a longer period of time, but the reason it's exactly
Hmm.
10 of each is because I figured out about what calories there was I was having per meal on the baseline diet, and then emulating that. As it turned out, it was 4 hot dogs and 3 eggs for the 10 a.m., 4 eggs and 3 hot dogs for the 3 p.m., and then 3 eggs and 3 hot dogs for the 8 p.m. And you'll find that it's actually very close in calories to what I'll be eating with the added cheese. So that part's kind of hilarious. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, we'll see. I'll say this: I will be extremely excited if it turns out that my waking up triglycerides are in fact lower, for that matter, under 100 when I add cheese. That will be a
Hmm.
huge component. And I don't even know if I want to hypothesize on that yet. I mean, if I've got to go with past data, I feel 51% sure that it will. Like I'll probably see lower fasted triglycerides and maybe under 100 if I add cheese. But I,
Okay, so if that happens, here's what you gotta do. Next, you gotta sleep at LabCorp. The exact same thing, and just walk in as soon as they open and get a full blood draw just to see if there are any changes in insulin or anything like that.
I literally just did this. I didn't sleep there, but I was outside the door right when they opened at 8 a.m. because I wanted to get a 12-hour fasted blood draw. Since my baseline diet has the last meal at 8 p.m., I wanted to get that 12-hour, uh, that one point. Problem is they're not going to open up earlier than that. I would need to
Mhm.
hire a phlebotomist and actually
I'm
have
pretty
them
sure
capture it
there's
and
a
spin
pretty
it.
good possibility that there would be some volunteers for that. I'm sure
Oh
there's at
yeah,
least one.
don't get me wrong. Like, I would love to do a more expanded version of this, but let's get to Yeah, the point of finding out if there really is a difference. If there really is a difference, then yeah, I would be very curious as to whether fasting insulin is different. But this I could hypothesize on. If the cheese does have a more insulinogenic response, and that results in a reduction, or I should just say uptake of triglycerides, right? Thereby reducing it, then I think it's going to be more postprandial. I don't think it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the basal insulin levels are appreciably raised. I think it's just more the post meal effect. That's what I think.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here, but I'm glad to have just done this as just like a quick video so I could post it for posterity as opposed to like building a whole lot. I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff going on right now. So I figured this would be good because I do like to give ongoing progress and data for everybody. So anyway, I will probably be chatting with you in a little bit, Siobhan. Hope you're having a good day.
All right. Yep. See ya.